everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. My name is Raymond, and in this video I'm taking a look at the One Ring 2nd edition, the tabletop RPG based of course on J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. This is published by Free League Publishing, who were kind enough to send a copy for me to review. And before I start going through the book and showing you what's inside and how it all works, I'd like to ask you to please hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. It really helps the channel. And please also check out my Patreon page by clicking the link in the description below. That'll take you to my page, and there you can read how you can support my channel. And it starts from just €1 per month, and in return you will get your name in the credits, early access to all of my videos, and access to Patreon exclusive content, and you also save up for the Board Game Heaven enamel pin. Alright, let's take a closer look at the book. Alright, so let's start with the book itself. It is of course a very nice looking book. It's beautiful, it's pretty thick, as you can see. It has the title on the spine and a bit of an explanation on the back here. And like it says here on the back, it has rules for traveling across the land, for facing foes, meeting the personalities of Middle-earth, advice for the Loremaster, the Game Master, on how to bring it to life, rules, all kinds of things. The 6 patrons, your patrons, basically something like your gods that you can follow. Only these are probably still just living people, living legends. A bestiary, of course, with all the monsters and adversaries you might encounter. And of course, rules for creating your own, well, nameless things it says here, but also your own backgrounds, your own histories, settings, you name it. And there's plenty of landmarks here as well. So there's a whole bunch of information in this book about Middle-earth and the era in which the books of the Lord of the Rings take place. Worth noting is that the One Ring 2nd edition is fully compatible with the 1st edition book. So if you do own the 1st edition, you can safely buy any books from the 2nd edition because they will be backwards compatible. The 2nd edition basically takes all the rules from the 1st edition and its addenda, so all the additional rules that came in expansions, and bundles them all together in the new core book. It also makes a few changes to the rules, mostly some quality of life improvements, streamlined rules, and some things are now handled by the players on their character sheet, taking a bit of a burden away from the Game Master. But as you can see, the cover is really nice. It has a very nice linen finish. It looks very luxurious, and the art on it, as you might see, is like UV print, so this is a bit glossy. It has of course the ring in the back, which kind of doubles as the Eye of Sauron, being red, and the art here in the silhouette of the Dark Lord Sauron himself kind of suggests a lighter vertical stripe, which is of course the eye, the pupil within the red ring. And I think that's very nicely done. And there is a lot of art in this book, and it looks absolutely stunning. So you get this hardcover book, and right away here in the beginning you can see the map of Eriador, which is a large part of Middle-earth, here where the Shire is, where the journey begins, and on the path east through Bree to Rivendell. That's where the journey began. And here in the west there's Lindon, where the elves live, and there's a bunch that you will probably recognize already here. So you can use this map to already explain to your players where your story starts, if you're starting in the Shire or anywhere else. But the back of this book also has that same map, but this is a hex crawl map. So there's a legend here, and it says green, that's the free lands, So Linden and the Shire, that's free lands. The yellow squares or hexes are the wild lands. Orange, that's the dark lands. And then we have impassable terrain, which is of course all of these mountain ranges. And we have some of them are numbered, which are perilous areas. So here, for example, and there's a number of those in the map as well. So that's pretty interesting, but let's start at the beginning. Here, there's some acknowledgements here, of course. Here is the starting index. So there's a lot of chapters in this book, and it starts with, of course, a prologue here about the twilight of the Third Age, adventuring in the Third Age, the folk of Eriador, playing the game, of course, and the structure of the game. The second chapter talks about action resolution, about the dice and when to roll them, how scenes work, making rolls, of course, there's a lot of information about that. There's conditions that your characters can suffer from, and of course the character sheet, because you'll be making a character as well for this. Then how adventures work, so your characters, they'll have a culture, a background, characteristics, attributes, stats that you will be filling in, skills and combat proficiencies, distinctive features, languages even, and typical names, because you will encounter different languages and some of your characters may know those languages, others may not, so that's also important in this world. Then we have all the different classes or races, if you will, species, I guess, of peoples in Middle-earth. You've got the Bardings, the Dwarves of Durin's Folk, Elves of Linden, Hobbits of the Shire, the Men of Bree, and the Rangers of the North. So those are the ones you can choose to be as a character. Your character will have a certain calling, previous experience, starting gear. You can get a starting reward and a virtue. And then as a group of characters that you've created, you form a company, and that company will follow a certain patron. You will find a safe haven where you're starting your adventure and where you may rest in between adventures. Your fellowship will have a rating and a focus value, which we will see in a bit. And of course you will gain experience, so you get skill points and adventure points that you get to spend between sessions and further adventures. All right, then in more detail we get characteristics here about your skills, combat proficiencies, any features that you might have, endurance and hope, standards of living, important, and your war gear. Then there's wisdom and valor, and basically this is all still linked to character creation, because your character will have a certain wisdom and a certain valor value. You can get rewards. Here is the virtues again, cultural virtues. So all of these different folk have different virtues as well. Then finally you're going on an adventure. You've got adventure phases. So this explains how that works. There's going to be combat. You can have council and how you journey across the map. The different phases, how that works. And fellowship phase, basically you have the adventure phase where all the action takes place and the traveling and whatnot, combat. And a fellowship phase, which is basically after those adventures, you kind of reflect upon what you've done, I guess. You level up, if you will, and you talk about what's next. Then this section is, of course, for the Loremaster, so not so much for the players, about running the game, of course. And there's a lot of information here. So we'll browse through that when we get to the book. And then there's a whole chapter about the world. There's a lot already in this core book, and there are expansion books which will bring more to the game, will add more to the world, expand it. And then finally there's an appendix with some additional information. All right, in a nutshell, so look at this beautiful art. And I like that basically these chapters have little thumbnails of that art that you will see as well. So here we have a couple of hobbits here traveling, and it's very nice. It's not super detailed art, but it gives you a impression of what the world looks like, and I think it's very well done. So here the prologue, which starts with a nice letter from Gandalf himself. And the introduction here tells you that it is the year 2965 of the Third Age, and the shadow is returning. 24 years ago, an alliance of elves, men and dwarves defeated a horde of orcs and wild wolves under a sky darkened by giant bats, inaugurating a new era of prosperity for the free peoples. But 20 years is a long time for peace to last, and in many dark corners of the earth, a shadow is lengthening once again. And this is basically the setting, just like in The Lord of the Rings, or basically in The Hobbit, in the first book, where Bilbo Baggins goes on an adventure. And there is already foreboding, and which of course all plays out in the Lord of the Rings. And as you're playing this, especially your first adventures, if you got the starter kit, which I highly recommend, check out my video on that by clicking the eye in the corner of this video. That really starts the story, the RPG off very well, I think. You get pre-generated characters, they're hobbits in the Shire. You're going on small adventures, but you can already tell that there's more darkness looming. There are strange happenings going on. And the starter set will also give you the dice you need for playing this game, and a couple of handouts and things that you can use, some cards. So that is very, very handy to start with. So then, of course, if you've played through that, you'll already know the basic rules, and then you can dive into the core book for the complete rules and on how you make your own characters, because those in the starter kit, like I said, are pre-generated. So the One Ring second edition. This is, of course, the second edition. There has been a first edition of these books, and this basically kind of rewrites it, not lore-wise, but rules-wise, into what I think is an easier, a more accessible way to play. And it says here, in 2011, that was the first edition, Adventures Over the Edge of the Wild, which was also an award-winning game, bringing Middle-earth to the gaming table. So, for 10 years, players of the game have traveled far and wide across Middle-earth, adventuring for multiple decades of game time. This new edition of the One Ring brings players further into the twilight of the Third Age, and does it with a set of updated and streamlined rules, mostly. Developed over years of players' feedback and design development. And an entirely new graphic presentation. I did also very much like the graphic presentation, the illustrations of the first edition, mind you. Perhaps even a little more, I dare say, because it was a little bit more realistic, and this is more, like I said, a bit more impressionist, broad strokes. In any case, it does look really good. Now, on one hand, I do want to kind of tell you everything about this book in detail, but it would just take too long. I mean, look at how big this book is. So I am going to browse a bit quicker through the book, and you might want to discover this on your own if you end up buying this book. But what I can say is that this is a very good read. It's fun to read if you're a fan, of course, of The Lord of the Rings. I guess that goes without saying if you're interested in this role-playing game. But even if you never really plan to play the role-playing game, this is a good read just for the lore and the background and everything. You can kind of already see stories unfolding in the theater of your mind, which of course is what an RPG is all about. But you can do that without even playing, because there's so much information in this book, and I just love reading through all this. Here's a bit of a timeline, the shadow of the past, about those last 20-ish years. And there's rumors of turmoil and strife in Wilderland. So that's basically the premise, you know, the things that happened in the past 20 years. And things are getting strange. Here is Gandalf entering Hobbiton, which is so cool. And this art I really enjoy as well. Really, really well done. Nicely illustrated. So this first chapter kind of explains mostly what the Loremaster does here, that the Loremaster doesn't have an active role in the characters, that's the players. The Loremaster really, just like in D&D, has to oversee the adventure and feed the players the things that are going to happen. And this is pretty much straightforward if you've ever played an RPG before. But for players who are new, this is good to read, and the Loremaster here should be familiar with, well, the entire book here. Again, a good reason to start with the starter kit, which just has a smaller condensed rule book with just the basics, just the things you need to get started on your first adventure, which is also great for starting Loremasters. All right, so let's just go through this quick. Structure of the game, again, like I said, there's a adventuring phase and a fellowship phase. And, well, in the adventuring phase, everything that goes on with the players happens. They go on adventures, they meet NPCs, they fight enemies, they find treasure or items or whatever, clues to whatever's happening in the story. And then, of course, the Loremaster sets up the scenes, and the players then are encouraged to describe how their characters react to the situation. What are your characters doing? What do they see? And is there anything that they want to do, perhaps? And depending on what the players are doing, the Loremaster might want them to do skill checks, you know, roll some dice, see if they find anything, see if they are proficient in a certain language for reading a certain map or a note or runes inscribed on a tomb, whatnot. And so, yeah, there's a number of things that your characters can do. And of course, the Loremaster reacts to that and tells you how it all plays out. And after you've had an adventure, there's a fellowship phase. And it says here, it starts with the players narrating what their characters do when they finally return from their adventuring to rest for a while. And it's now the Loremaster's turn to act reactively by listening to their players' propositions and wishes and making sure that the rules are correctly applied. During the fellowship phase, the players present to the Loremaster their ideas and intentions, for example, choosing where they are going to rest and deciding what they will do while they are there. It's pretty straightforward, really, but this gives you a chance to digest what happened and to see how you've leveled up because of that. You might get some points to distribute on your character sheet. And yes, let me actually show you the character sheet here in the back. So here it is. This is your character sheet, and you will be filling in values in all of these boxes here, and you will be crossing off these little boxes of coloring them in. And skill points here, and traveling gear. There's a box for everything. You can fill in stuff. And of course, the more you cross these off, the better these skills will get. So you have these 3 boxes of skills. Then you have combat proficiencies here, and rewards and virtues. And that's all explained in the chapter about character creation. Here's another map. It's upside down right now, but let me just quickly, without losing the page where I'm on, show you that. Here's basically your journal log, your journey path. So you can draw in the map, perhaps a piece of this map that you've traveled, to keep a log of what you did, and just copy this, of course, copy this page, or if you have the PDF version, just print it off and draw on that. And there's, of course, going to be events that's going to be happening. You may have ponies and horses, you know, to carry your load, and the names of the characters in the company, and there's travel fatigue as well. Well, there's a lot of detail going on here. All right, let's continue with the next chapter. This is all basically introduction. So, chapter 2 deals with action resolution, and again, beautiful art of the 3 trolls that Bilbo in The Hobbit encounters. that have been turned to stone by the daylight. And here our adventurers are having a meal with a campfire, kind of under the protection of these stone trolls. It's really nice. So it talks about the dice here. So you'll have a number of 6-sided dice and a number of 12-sided feet dice. And the starter kit comes with these dice. These 6s are just plain D6s, but the starter kit has some very nice looking ones, of course. And the 12-sided dice have a Eye of Sauron on the 11 and the Gandalf rune on the 12. So there's no 11 or a 12 on those dice. Basically just 10, 1 to 10, but 2 additional symbols. One is a critical failure and one is a critical success, so to speak. And kind of like in the Free League's Year Zero engine system, when you roll these 6s, a 6 is a success. Now in this game it's slightly different, but the 6 does have an Elvish rune on it here, which represents an additional level of success. So rolling 6s is also good in this game. Now, here it tells you when to roll. The Loremaster should ask for a die roll only if there is a possibility that a player's chosen action might fail. So not just in combat, but also, like I said, when you're examining something, or maybe there's some sinister figure moving around in the shadows, lurking, and you need to roll like a perception check, stuff like that, then the Loremaster might say, well, it's dark and you've only got like a torch or a lantern and you can't really see what's going on beyond the light of your torch. So you'll need to have a keen eye, so roll a perception check or something like that. Pretty much standard fare for the seasoned dungeon master or role player. But yeah, it just explains all of that here. If you're in danger, if there's knowledge to be had, if your character perhaps has knowledge about a certain situation or doesn't, then, well, you just roll to find out. Or when you're manipulating something, if you're opening a door that's stuck or whatever, then you might want to make a roll. Scenes in brief. Breaking down the scenes into One Ring work as follows. So the Loremaster describes a situation requiring the players to make decisions. Then the players investigate the situation, considering their options, and once decided, they choose their action and describe it to the Loremaster. And then the Loremaster evaluates the plan of the players and adjudicates whether to just say yes and grant them what they want or ask for a die roll. Again, pretty straightforward and something that you might have seen in many role-playing games. All right, this, of course, again, I'm going in too much detail here, explains exactly how to make rolls and how to read the success dice. There's target numbers, and you will find lots of tables like this in the book that help you with, the story, with how to progress with role-playing, things you might find, you name it. There's tables for basically everything. Another nice piece of art of hobbits rolling dice. It's really very nice. All right, so there's modifiers, bonus success dice, penalty success dice, magical success. I'll just skip through that. Your character will also have conditions. So you can be miserable, weary, or wounded, of course, in order of seriousness. Yeah, this weighs you down. Stuff that happens might weigh you down, and that will have a negative effect on your die rolls or on your successes, on the things you're attempting to do. So those are explained here, and again, that will be noted on your character sheet. Here it is again, and this basically explains the character sheet. There's a whole lot of terms here, like adventure and skill points, armor, attribute ratings, calling, endurance, fellowship, flaws, etc. I'm skipping a few. The shadow path is also something that might happen to you. Virtues. So again, a brief overview of your character sheet is here. Now you will go on an adventure. Adventurers. This is a very cool chapter in my opinion. So we have all of these different characters that you can choose from, like I mentioned in the index, and their cultures. And that's just a fantastic read. Again, you don't even need to really want to play the RPG to pick up this book, because reading this is a lot of fun. There's a lot of dry stuff in here that's specifically for the rules, like all of these tables and stuff like that. But there's also a whole lot of cool lore. And look at this art again. It's just simply beautiful. So here are the Bardings. Bardings are Northmen of noble origins, hailing from Wilderland, far off to the east. They rebuilt their city of Dale from its ashes after the slaying of the dragon Smog, of course in The Hobbit. And they earned a new prosperity, trading with nearby kingdoms of elves and dwarves. Like Bard Bowman is one of them. And again, here, if you pick one of these men, these Bardings, to be your character, if you want to play that race, then you can roll for your attributes. You can roll a d6, and depending on which number you roll, you might have like a 5 in strength, a 5 in heart, and a 4 in wits. You can also just pick. So you can be a very clever character or a very strong character. They're pretty stout men, and this always adds up to the same value, right? So doesn't really matter what you pick, but you can just roll and see what you get. There's a couple of stats that you will derive from being a barding and fill that in on your character sheet. And this, of course, is going to be different for each people of Middle Earth. You've got skills that you can do, and the underlined ones, the red ones here, those are favored. You pick one of those, that's your favored skill. And yeah, you copy the listed skill ranks. So these numbers here, they will be just filled in your character sheet, because every race has different kinds of skills. There's combat proficiencies, distinctive features, languages, and you can also pick names. It's really nice that they provide typical names, male and female names, for all the species that live in Middle Earth. Next, there's the dwarves of Durin's folk. Pretty much the same again. So the dwarves are an ancient and proud folk whose customs and traditions are mostly unknown to outsiders. A dwindling people, they have recently recovered some of their lost greatness, and a dwarven king reigns once again under the lonely mountain in Wilderland. Again, same with rolling an attribute. So you get your strength, heart, and wits stats, your derived stats, your skills, combat proficiencies, and some names, of course. Then we have the Elves of Linden. Again, nice art there. You can be an elf. Let's read that intro here. The fair folk of Eriador have dwelt in the Westlands since before the drowning of Beleriand. They are all members of the Firstborn, displaying a wisdom beyond the reach of men. They rarely leave their sanctuaries in the Grey Havens, for these are their fading years. Again, attributes, derived stats, skills. So you simply pick a class that you might think, this is something I want to play. You roll a die, or you pick one of these attribute lines here, and you fill in all the stuff on your character sheet. And that's how you make your character. And of course, all the details of that are explained in the book. The Men of Bree as well. Did I skip over the hobbits too quickly? Yes, I did not read. Hobbits are a small and merry folk, possessing a love for time-honored traditions and respectable ways, and a strong dislike for anything out of the ordinary. If hobbits had their way, the days would go by in an unchanging world, as they have since anyone can remember, at least in their land, the Shire. Really fun. And I love the names, all these, the Barry Lag, Bungo, you can be Bungo, Baggins, or Boffin, Bolger. Lots of names that were also featured in the movies, which of course I love, and I just really like that. Men of Bree. Of course, the town that has the Prancing Pony Inn. The inhabitants of the Bree land and its 4 villages lying around Bree Hill are the descendants of the ancient people that first dwelt in the region known today as Eriador, the Lone Lands. Few have survived the turmoils that have ravaged the area, but they are still there now. So, yeah, just basically men, just people, humans. And they have common names like Alfred, Bill, Bob, Carl, Ed. Very recognizable as well. And then finally we have the Rangers of the North, a mysterious people, right? Like Aragorn, of course, was as well. The Rangers of the North are a secret people, severely diminished in number with the passing of 1,000 years. They wander in disguise among the ruins of what was once their kingdom of Arnor, tirelessly patrolling its many paths and roads. So, same thing, and more exotic names, of course, for the Rangers. So those are the races, the species of people you can pick. And then, of course, you'll have callings, and that will also have some kind of impact on your character and your character sheet. And you can be a captain, a champion, a messenger, a scholar, a treasure hunter, and a warden. All of that detailed here. Again, good read, really fun. You can have previous experience here, and that will cost points to get levels. And there's starting gear, again with really nice illustrations here of all of that gear. And I haven't really told you about how this book feels. I've been, browsing through this book, but the pages are so nice. They're very thick paper quality and they feel very luxurious. It's just a joy to read through this book. It's just extremely well done. And I also love the small, the illustrations along the edges here, with the red on the top and the bottom. Just these little touches make it look so nice. So here we have a whole table of weapons and how much damage they do, injury points, the load, because you do have a load. You can only carry so much, of course. Combat proficiency, so there's brawling weapons, there's swords, spears, axes, and bows. And some of them have notes, of course. Some of them are ranged weapons. Some of them are two-handed. Some might be one or two-handed. Some can be thrown. So that's interesting as well. You might have a shield, other traveling gear, some useful items. And there is a standard of living as well. You can actually check on your character sheet, and some are like cultures will have a certain standard of living, like elves and rangers are pretty frugal, hobbits and men of Bree are common, bardings and dwarves are prosperous. But of course, depending on your character's background, you might be a very wealthy hobbit who would like a prosperous or even a rich standard of living and only have the best rooms in the inn. Stuff like that kind of also fills in your background and adds to the fun when role-playing, of course. It kind of builds in or ties into your character. You might be a very posh hobbit, or a very rough elf, perhaps, who knows, or dwarves are usually the rough ones, of course, but you might be a frugal dwarf, who knows? So you don't have to specifically stick, of course, to those tables. Then there's hobbit ponies and full-sized horses. You can bring a pack animal basically with you to carry some of your load. And here it says, if you're like poor frugal, you can't afford a mount. If you're common, you have an old horse or a half-starved pony, the poor thing. Prosperous, you've got a decent beast. And rich or very rich, you've got a fine beast. I just love also how things are worded in this book. It's really in the style of what you would expect of The Lord of the Rings. Right. I'm going to try and speed it up here a bit because we haven't even gone through a fraction of the book right here, and we're already like 25 minutes in or so. So you have a patron. These are the patrons. You've got Balin, the son of Fundin. Bilbo Baggins is actual patron. Círdan, the shipwright. Gandalf the Grey. Gilrain, daughter of Dirael. And Tom Bombadil and Lady Goldberry. Some very well-known names there. And you pick a safe haven, which is, of course, the starting base of operations. And perhaps later on, if you travel, you might find another safe haven to stay, such as the Prancing Pony Inn in Bree, or Rivendell, who knows? So you will find new places suitable to be used as safe havens. Right, then there's a bit about fellowship rating, fellowship focus. I won't dwell too much on that and experience. You will get there when you get there and when playing the game. And then further adventures. Well, let's move on to the next chapter. Characteristics. This, of course, goes in more detail about your skills, your favorite skills. You've got skill categories, strength and heart and wit, which are 3 categories on your character sheet. Here you can see again, strength, heart and wits. So that does have an impact on the skills you will be using. So all of that is explained here. I need to hurry up here. There's a lot to read. You've got combat proficiencies, some distinctive features you might have. You might be bold, cunning, or eager, for example. You might also have some negative features, actually, some things that might hinder you in your adventures, and hopefully you might grow your character to overcome certain things. But here are some more positive things, of course: being faithful or fair, fair-spoken, fierce, etc. You could be tall. So endurance and hope here as well. That's taken into account whenever an adventure is subjected to some form of harm. You could get weary, and like we saw later, you could get miserable. And resting, of course, helps with overcoming that. And you can also lose hope and recover hope. And that is a bit more profound for your character. And then we have, again, the standards of living, which I will skip for now. War gear, with some nice illustrations once again. All right, chapter 5, Valor and Wisdom. I'll just read a bit of this intro here, which says, wisdom and valor affect the game in several ways. They influence social interactions, provide player heroes with special abilities and superior equipment, and allow them to resist the dangerous influence of the shadow. Because this is definitely a thing in this game. The Eye of Sauron, kind of spreading the shadow across the land, will influence the happenings and your characters. And you will also draw attention of the eye. If you draw too much attention to yourself, then the eye will at some point take note of you and your party, and that might have some negative effects as well. Let's see, rolls made using Valor and Wisdom are resolved as usual, rolling a feat die and a number of success dice equal to the appropriate rating in the challenged ability. The difficulty is the heart target number for rolls based on Valor, and the wits target number for rolls based on wisdom, as modified by the source that originated the roll. It's a bit more technical here, but yeah, basically you roll for wisdom and valor, and wisdom is obviously how wise, how clever your character is, their trust in their own capabilities, self-confidence, and capacity for good judgment. While valor is, of course, your courage. And your courage might be tempered by dangerous deeds, and you will be spending your experience points after each adventure in either wisdom or valor, and that will, of course, grow your character. Now, you can get rewards as well to prepare you better for your next adventures. Here are some of these virtues. Again, virtues: confidence, dour-handed, hardiness, mastery, nimbleness, and prowess. And cultural virtues. If you are barding, you can have the cram, an ancient recipe of cram, which is a biscuitish cake that keeps good indefinitely, made by your folk for long journeys, kind of like lembas that the elves have. You can be a dragon slayer, a dwarf friend. You can have fierce shot. Look at that. That looks good. High density language of birds even. Then the dwarves will have Baruch Kazad, the secret tongue of the dwarves, guarded as a treasure of the past. You can have broken spells. You have been taught fragments of old enchantments that retain some power to this day. Dark for dark business. Your kind is not troubled by mere darkness in itself, as most of the members of other cultures are. Durin's way. They fought many wars in deep places beneath the earth. You've been taught how to best defend yourself while fighting underground. You can be stone hard. The dwarves were made to be strong and to endure, for they came unto the world when a great evil ruled Middle-earth. As long as your spirit supports your strength, you can resist any hurt of the body more heartily than most. You've also got untamable spirit. Then the elves will have against the unseen. They can perceive creatures that dwell in the wraith world, as is depicted here. It's pretty good. You've got deadly archery. Elbereth Gilthoniel, the name of Elbereth, the queen of the stars, is revered by all the Eldar still dwelling in Middle-earth. You have resorted to calling on her name in moments of great need, asking the Kindler to bestow her grace upon you. Elvish dreams, gleam of wrath. Well, you get the idea, right? Every class has its own very special virtues that the others, of course, do not have. And yeah, I just love reading that, and it just makes your character so unique. I really like that. The Men of Bree and the Rangers of the North. Right. See, and the chapters aren't too big, right? They just go about those things very in detail, but it's not overwhelming. It's not like you've read all this, you need to remember everything, single thing. No, you just note down on your character sheet what applies to your character, and every player will remember that for themselves. And of course, the Loremaster, it's handy if you can remember all of that. If you have, like, you can always reference the book, of course, and just quickly look it up. But it helps when you know, hey, look, you're an elf. You can do this. Did you remember to try and use your whatever virtue you want to use in this situation? Or you're a hobbit, and well, this is a virtue that you can use. Or maybe this is something you, as a hobbit, might not be very good at or proficient at. So, yeah, I think it kind of naturally happens that the players will adopt these virtues and all the other things that you write on your sheet and try to make the best use of that. But of course, the Loremaster can always kind of push them in a right direction if they're not very experienced with the role-playing. Well, then we have adventure. The adventure phase. It explains how adventuring works and how combat works, which is of course a fun part of the game, but certainly not the main part of the game. There will be dice rolling, and that's something I always enjoyed in Dungeons and Dragons as well. But this is really a role-playing game about storytelling and about experiencing things, interactions, and those interactions don't always have to be combat. But it's there, and it's fun, and there are certain stances you can take. You can be in the front position, melee, or in the back with ranged weapons. So that's all explained here. There's a stance. So you have 3 close combat stances: forward, open, and defensive. And there's 1 ranged combat stance, which is in the back. And that is also explained here. So here there's an overview of that, how you engage the enemy, how action resolution works, and of course, yeah, something I should mention, if you want to take up ranged combat, you will always need somebody in a close combat position, because otherwise, if there's no one on the front line, then there is no front line, and then the rear will automatically become the front line. So if you want to do range combat, make sure there's someone in your party that does close combat. But that is, again, kind of logical. Loremaster actions, resolving attacks. This is all pretty technical, but so I'll skip that. But you have some tables to help you with that. Again, with the weapons, we saw that before, the same table. Your armor, your shields are also listed here as a handy reference to calculate the damage you do or take from enemies. Your wound severity. Any complications that might have in combat tasks even. Some nice art here as well. Then afterwards, you can have council. You can have social encounters. Let's see here. A council is set up and resolved applying the following 3 steps: set, resistance, introduction, and interaction. When a company travels to Rivendell to petition Master Elrond or asks to see the mayor of the Shire in Michel Delving, they do it with a purpose in mind. Before the council even begins, the players should all agree on what the company hopes to achieve from the meeting and possibly on how to achieve it. And then there is an introduction where they present themselves, and you have a spokesperson. It sounds very formal, as is depicted here as well. And then there's some rolls to be made. And you can try to impress the council. You can be very courteous or just maybe very rude. You just want to get something done, like the dwarves, you know, just immediately taking action, or the elves being very diplomatic. And then there's the interaction here. Yeah, again, you can be reluctant, open, or friendly. There's so much detail here. Okay, journeying on the map, traveling company. I'm going to speed this up a bit. Here's that sheet that we saw in the back of the book, where you can draw in your actual journey and what happened, make some notes, and ending the journey. Oh, look at that, beautiful art. Okay, I'm going to fast forward here to the fellowship phases, which is basically where you level up. And you get your experience points, you do updates, you choose your next destination. Oh, look at that beautiful door. The undertakings you're going to do. And once every 3 fellowship phases, or after 3 sessions, so to speak, winter comes. And with it, the end of the current year, you've got Yuletide here. And that is also a festival that takes place in Middle-earth, and something you could actually celebrate as a party. Which is kind of, you know, just indicating the passage of the years. Your characters might actually adventure for several years and grow older. All right, well, you can also meet your patron and get something from them. You know, they might help you in certain ways. There's a lot of things you can do here. Even write a song, recount a story, also depending on just how much your players want to roleplay. Right, this is all for the Loremaster, so if you're a player of the game, you should skip this part and go to the next timestamp on my video. So this basically just tells you how to run the game, how you can handle certain scenes, how to frame the scene, describe the consequences, advance the gameplay. Very, very friendly for new players as well. It really, like a lot of Free League books. I've seen this in Tales from the Loop as well. Even in the Alien rulebook. That it really takes its time to explain to you how you as a Loremaster can prepare a game, can run a game, can help your players. And I think that's really well done. It's very easy to read, to get through, very player friendly. Here, your Loremaster as a director, as a referee, as a narrator, an unreliable narrator either. A canon, it talks about canon of the story, right? So, of course, do you want to be super consistent or not? And this kind of just tells you, well, the quick and easy answer to such concerns is that there is no such thing as an established Tolkien canon. You might debate, well, of course there is, but it's in this game you make up your own stories, and whether they are canon or not, Middle-earth is huge. And during the happenings of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, you follow the main characters. But everything that happens outside from that story is undocumented. So you can make up anything you want that happened in those times, as long as, well, I guess you stick to the lands that exist. You have your map, so you know where you can go and what towns and cities and bastions there are in the world, and you also know which kind of creatures there live, and all kinds of monsters that exist in Middle-earth. So as long as you kind of stick to that, you can make up whatever story you want. And that's great, of course. I really love that. So, some tools here. Now, again, I'm going to go through this a bit faster. Loremaster characters. Here is the shadow. Now this is kind of important as well, because the shadow is the creeping darkness, right? That's the eye of Sauron, the evil that's spreading across the land. And that, of course, plays a big role in the advancement of your story. Shadow points here, talks about shadow points, because this growing darkness kind of starts weighing on your characters, on their hearts and minds. And this burden is represented by the accumulation of shadow points and by the sources that force their gain. And this will have, yeah, like this says, it has an impact on your characters and what they do, and might be a negative impact. Consequences of shadow, here it says, all of that. You can become miserable and lose all hope and just not want to continue anymore as a character, and then you need to find a way to overcome that, and your other players can help you with that, and maybe you need to rest or see your patron and, you know, boost your morale again. Right, you might get misdeeds here. You might violent threats, manipulating others, theft or plunder, torment or torture, or even murder. So if things like that happen, you know, you get more shadow points, and that's generally a bad thing, of course. Here's Gollum. A good example of somebody who has succumbed to the shadow, like it literally says here. So that's great. All right, adversaries. Well, I'm gonna just see what we have here. Some more combat stuff here. Evil men, with their stats listed here. You've got a Southerner Raider, Southerner Champion, Ruffians. We've got Orcs, of course, with again some nice illustrations. We've got Trolls. We've got all kinds of things. We got the Undead, Wraiths. And just look at this beautiful art. We've got the Wolves of the Wild, the Wargs, Wild Wolves, Wolf Chieftains, Werewolves even in Middle-earth, Hound of Sauron, and that's that. Now, the expansion books will have some additional things. I kind of hope this book would have more, but fortunately there are more books than just the core book. There is treasure explained here. There's, of course, kinds of magical treasure. We all know Sting from The Hobbit and the mithril chainmail that Frodo wore and stuff like that. The Arkenstone, all kinds of things that exist in Middle-earth that you might encounter. All right, just gonna go through that. The Eye of Mordor. Eye awareness. Here, this is where Sauron will basically take note of your group of players. So it's a level of attention that the enemy reserves for the company of player heroes. Its rating ebbs and flows based on their actions and wandering, and is kept track of from session to session. And when it reaches a certain limit, it triggers the hunt, representing the way that the enemy is able to focus the hostility of the world itself towards the group of player heroes. So things will get more dangerous for you the more attention you attract to yourself and your group, which is also just, oh, so good. I love that. Here, the hunt is explained. And then finally we have a chapter about the world of Middle Earth, which is a big chapter, and we have an appendix as well here. But that's a rather hefty chapter, and a good read as well. It talks about all the places we know and a lot of places you may not know. Here is, of course, the Shire. Beautiful. And we have the Bree land with Bree, of course. So far, so good. We have an evening at the Prancing Pony. Look at that. Nice in there with all these hobbits and dwarves. There seems to be a ranger there. Let's see what else we can highlight here. The Great East Road with Weathertop. The Greenway, the Barrow Downs, the North Downs. I think this was Weathertop that's depicted here. Ruins and broken stones, the South Downs, the Howling Hollows, the Weather Hills, there's Weathertop. The Ettenmoors, Angmar, of course, with the Witch King of Angmar. The Old Witch Realm of Angmar. And the Trollshaws. There's Tharbad and Linden. The Blue Mountains. Here is a map of Linden. The Grey Havens there. Adventuring in Middle-earth. A bit of a summary, I guess. And then an appendix with some more things that are useful. Stuff about the patrons, Balin as a patron, Bilbo as a patron, the magic ring, Círdan the shipwright, Gandalf, Gilrain the fair, and Tom Bombadil and Goldberry over there. There's some landmarks. The Star of the Mist. So what's this? Fortified town in the foothills of the southern Ered Luin. These are just things you can read and use, perhaps. There's even a little map here. But really, this book does not have a campaign to play. There's things in the appendix you can use, of course. And but if you want an actual story to just right away start playing, again, I can highly recommend the starter kit. So again, check out that video, click the eye in the corner there, and you'll have that. Now, I do have some other books that I will also be perusing and reviewing, which is one of them here, The Ruins of the Lost Realm, which adds more information. So no scenarios to play in this, but just more information on the Lost Realm. Another one such book is Moria Through the Doors of Durin, which of course is all about Moria, the dwarves in the mountain, and what you might find there. But there's also this one, Tales from the Lone Lands, and this is a book that has 6 different stories one could play. So if you're looking for more ready to go scenarios to play, adventures to play with your players, this is the book you will want. The others are basically source books that you can use for building your own world. All right, well, that was that. Let's head back up. And so that was my review of the One Ring 2nd edition RPG by Free League Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please also keep an eye out on other videos for the expansion books for this RPG. And I've also done an unboxing and review of the One Ring starter kit. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and please also check out my Patreon page by clicking the link in the description below or the icon at the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.